good, y'all? It's your boy King Cal 516 live in the mix, and this is the Swiss Flames podcast. So things are heating up in the John Wall situation, as reported now by Tim McMahon and ESPN a couple of days ago. We know that the Rockets and John Wall have mutually agreed for John Wall to be traded from the Rockets, and they're going to work on a trade deal. So he's going to basically report to training camp. He's going to go through the motions, everything he would normally do. The only big difference is they're not going to play him in games. Reason for this, the Rockets have Kevin Porter and Jalen Green now for their backcourt. They want those guys to play as much minutes. The Rockets are in a full rebuild. Excuse me. The Rockets are in a full rebuild mode, and because of that, this is going to cause conflict of interest. You do not want to bench John Wall because you're going to devalue him even more. And he's not a bench player. He's still a starting level caliber player. It's just that he's signed for 2 more years and he has $91.7 million left, and so that's supermax money. So because of his injuries and because he hasn't played much in the last 3 seasons, you know what I mean? The fact of the matter is teams are not looking at John Wall as a max player. So this what makes the trade a little bit difficult. So they don't want to do anything to devalue him more than what he might look towards a lot of teams. And so the obvious thing is this: you also don't want John Wall getting hurt at all. You know, you don't want to risk him getting hurt because that's going to even kill things even more. So it's a smart play by the Rockets. If you're John Wall, you basically have no say in it. So even though it's released out to me that this is mutual agreement, if you're John Wall's position, you really have nothing to say, because if you're John Wall, you're at the stage of your career, you don't want to be in a full rebuild with a team that's trying to be young. You don't want to be in that situation anyway. So it's in your best interest to just wait this out, and hopefully they find a trade partner. You know, but this is the part where I'm going to sit there and say, if you're a player, this is why I'm all for player empowerment. When the player has enough talent to kind of push his way to be where they want to be, I'm all for it. I understand the knock on players doing these super teams, but on the flip side, if you're John Wall, you just, have been injured so much recently that now that you're healthy, I'm pretty sure deep down John Wall just wants to play. But right now, from a business standpoint, it's not the best. It's not in his best interest to play to get to a better destination for him. So you can see sometimes the other end of the stick for the players. When they have to go through these ordeals, it doesn't get blasted at all in the media. It's just like, oh yeah, but the team has the right to do whatever they want. You understand what I'm saying? So as soon as the player tries to take a power, they get bashed for it. So it's just an interesting dynamic that goes on. Once again, I understand how people knock super teams who just don't like those super teams. But on the flip side, if the players, once the team doesn't want you, this is what you have to deal with. You get sit down. You know what I mean? Now, will the Rockets be able to find a trade destination for John Wall? That's going to be key. My opinion is John Wall ain't going nowhere until the halfway point of the season, because by then, in my opinion, you're going to have some players who get hurt. So now teams are going to be more need to maybe try to find something to, resalvage their season. And then also the players that signed this offseason will be eligible to be traded by the halfway point. You know what I mean? And so there'll be more options on the table. You know what I mean? Because the Rockets, it's obvious. I don't have to look at reports to know this, that the Rockets are in rebuild mode. So they're not going to look to take back unnecessary veteran contracts, multi-year contracts of veteran players that don't fit the timeline of Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. Kevin Porter Jr. is only 20 years old. Jalen Green just was drafted this past season. He's only 18 years old. These guys are young. So if you're going to trade for any player, you're going to want young players, young assets in return, and also draft compensation. Right? But because of the fact John Wall is going to draw interest from contenders, it's not going to be easy trade. It might end up having to be a 3-team trade, because I don't think there's any contender out there really that may have something that the Houston Rockets would want. The only team I can think of is the Denver Nuggets right now, off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure there's other teams, but the Denver Nuggets have Michael Porter Jr. that's not signed for the long haul. That's a trade that Houston would be interested in, right? You get Michael Porter Jr. and then you just basically give Michael Porter Jr. the extension, and you have him for the long haul. And you can fit him on a team that has more dominating guards like Kevin Porter and Jalen Green, because Michael Porter is more of a spot-up shooter anyway. So he'll fit right in that team. But if you're the Denver Nuggets, do you really want to do a John Wall deal? Now, you have Jamal Murray who's out, so you might say, hey, temporary. But no, if you're the Denver Nuggets, you're not going to go for an aging John Wall who's in his 30s when you have a Michael Porter who's in his early 20s. It's just not going to happen. It's not feasible. But I'm saying it would have to be a deal like that to pique the Rockets' interest, right? I don't see it happening. John Wall is making supermax money, and so any team that's going to give Houston anything, who's a contender, has to match the contracts. They have to match the value of the contract, and that's where it's going to get complicated. That's why I just don't see a one-on-one deal out there. You know what I mean? Because even that Michael Porter deal, the Denver Nuggets would have to add so much more. And to me, if you're Denver Nuggets, why would you put all those chips on the table for John Wall? That doesn't make sense for the Nuggets, right? So this is what the dilemma is going to be. There's going to be a lot of teams that it's the amount they have to put in to get John Wall that's going to make teams not want to. You understand what I'm saying? It's the same thing with Philadelphia. They might value Ben Simmons, which they should, more valuable than John Wall, but John Wall's contract is more money than Ben Simmons. So basically you would have to give more to get John Wall when you say that, and you're going to value Ben Simmons more than John Wall. So this is the dilemma, because right now a lot of people in the league are looking at John Wall's contract. It's kind of similar to the Chris Paul ordeal a few seasons back when Chris Paul was coming off all those injuries, and people weren't valuing Chris Paul at a max level, and so he had to go to OKC to rebuild his level of how teams view him. He had to change this how teams viewed his status. And he was able to do that. He revitalized the OKC. Then, all of a sudden, Phoenix buys him. Now, Phoenix just extended him for 3 years. So Chris Paul was able to do it. John Wall is going to have the chance to do it, but he needs to go into the right situation where he can be John Wall. You understand what I'm saying? And so this is going to be interesting. Like I said, I just don't think this is going to happen until the halfway point of the season, where there's going to be more chips that fall into play that allow teams to possibly go after somebody like a John Wall. So, it just brings my opinion that John Wall is going to be sitting down at least for halfway in the season. And it's unfortunate because, you spend all this time rehabilitating to come back, and now you have to sit down. Just as a business stance, you have to sit down. So, it just kind of sucks. But a couple teams that are being listed as potential suitors, we'll just end off with that and talk about these teams a little bit, are the Clippers. Obviously the Clippers, and once again, I don't think the Clippers have anything significant that the Rockets will want, but a possible guy, Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard is not too old. He's in his mid-20s, I believe. You know what I mean? They would have to probably take back Eric Bledsoe to try to fill some of that salary. Now you're getting closer to our deal, but if you're the Rockets, the main ingredient in that deal, any Clipper deal, if you're the Rockets, is you gotta start with Terrence Mann. Now, would the Clippers be wanting to give up Terrence Mann? Because Terrence Mann, you know what I'm saying, you can run kind of like a small wing lineup, but you can run Kevin Porter Jr., Terrence Mann, and Jalen Green. That's an exciting future. You know what I mean? Terrence Mann showed a lot of heart last year in the playoffs, being so young, but he still showed a lot of heart. But you know what I mean? I think the Clippers are legitimate because the Clippers have been tied to John Wall this whole offseason, even before this report came out. So the Clippers might feel a little pressure because of the fact that the Lakers have Reed up with Westbrook, and the Nets have a big three. So the Clippers might be looking for their kind of big three, and maybe have John Wall as the third option. So I could really see the Clippers trying to figure something out, and they have smart management. But I don't know if the Clippers could go head up in a trade. They probably would have to do a 3-team deal. So I think the Clippers are a definite potential destination for John Wall. I wouldn't be surprised there. Give them, a dominant ball handler who can really handle the ball, who can really play make. So I wouldn't be surprised. Another team, the Mavericks, who have been linked to, wanting to get a point guard to play beside Luka. You know what I mean? Would Houston take Kristaps Porzingis as the salary filler? Because Kristaps' contract would have to be added in the midst of maybe some young pieces and some draft picks. I don't know if Houston would do that, but Dallas wouldn't be a surprise destination because Dallas, on the Dallas team, maybe John Wall is the number 2 option, along with Tim Hardaway Jr., and have those two guys as guards next to Luka as the small forward. That might be something to look at. That might be something that they might be interested in. That might be something we see that the Mavericks, and I think the Mavericks, because of the new management, they'll be looking definitely to upgrade. And I think one of their main things as the new management, also with the new head coach Jason Kidd, they want to get a legitimate number 2 with Luka. They're going to do everything this season to see if they can get Kristaps back where he needs to be. But if Kristaps starts showing light, they might decide to keep him, or they might just use that as his value increases, then to trade him at that point for something different. You know what I mean? So I do believe Dallas is a legitimate spot that he could land, and a team that would have some interest there. And also, the Sixers and Kings, I don't really think the Sixers are going to be into John Wall. I don't think he's the caliber of player they want back in return for Ben Simmons. I could be wrong. I think if the Sixers get desperate, that's like a fallback option. I just don't think that'll be a priority for the Sixers. And then also, the Kings are another team that, have a little bit of rumors. And I'm pulling this all from CBS Sports, just in case you guys want to know where I'm getting this report from. But I can see the Kings trying to do it because they still have Marvin Bagley, who's still, a young player. He's more in the Christian Wood timeline, but that's still kind of in that age range. You know what I'm saying? And maybe Marvin Bagley could go revitalize his career in Houston. You understand what I'm saying? So I can see Houston being maybe interested in Marvin Bagley. I don't think he moves the needle, and Buddy Hield too. Once again, you could throw Buddy Hield in there, but he's not like Buddy Hield's a little older than people think, but he's more closer to the 30 than he is to his mid-20s, I believe. I think Buddy Hield's maybe like 27, 28, if I'm not mistaken right now. But, I don't know, and these are just ideas, right? If you're the Kings, you do want to kind of figure out how to make another move if you're the Kings. So if you can get John Wall, I just think that you got, a stud in De'Aaron Fox running your point. You don't really need another dominant point guard per se. So I don't see that being a perfect fit for the Kings, even though they're kind of suggested that. My opinion, I do believe the Mavericks and Clippers are definitely possible destinations. I think that those are more likely than the Sixers or the Kings. Like I said, I think the Sixers probably would consider that like a fallback option. But neither here nor there. What do you guys think about the John Wall situation? What team do you think will end up trading for him? Do you think he could be traded before the season? Just hit me up in the comments, let me know. But I personally think he's not going to be traded until the halfway point in the season. Don't expect to trade right away. And I think it probably because it's going to be a team that's probably more in the contender. You know what I mean? I think it might end up being at least a 3-team trade to get the right pieces that Houston wants. Anyhow, it's your boy King Kyle 516 signing off. Please check out the website www.swissflames.com. Hit us up on Twitter at SwissFlames, and definitely check out Facebook and YouTube at SwissFlame Podcast. Till next time, peace.